Hey guys, in this video we are making a pair of crochet pants. To do this I'm using a Red Heart No. 4 medium weight yarn in the color Sea Coral. I have 2 skeins of this to complete a pair of pants for me. I would say I wear a size medium or a No. 3 pair of pants, so I am going to use 2 skeins of this, like I said, and you can get more or less depending on how big of a pair of pants you need to make. We are also going to be using a 5.5mm hook for these pair of pants. I am going to be starting off with a chain, and you are going to want to chain however many is comfortable for you around your waist. I am going to chain 108. It does not necessarily matter the count that you have for this beginning chain, so it does not need to be a multiple of any number, but it does make it easier if it is an even number to move on when you are ready to increase for your hips and legs. So again, I'm going to start off with the chain of 108. If you need to see how to do this or anything else in this video, I will put links for those in the description box below. For the beginning of these pants, we are basically going to start off with a pair of shorts, and I do have a shorts tutorial on my channel already, which I will also link in the description box below. But if you have already seen that pattern, then you basically know how to do the beginning of these shorts already, and you will want to make a pair of shorts that is comfortable for you. You will not want to make the legs as long, depending on how high you want the pattern of the leg of these pants to start. If you have seen the tutorial for those shorts and you would like to skip ahead, I will put a timestamp in the description box below of the time that you can skip forward to see how to do the pattern on the bottom of the legs of these pants. If you have seen the shorts tutorial, you will notice that I am using a normal No. 4 medium weight yarn and a 5.5mm hook for this pair of pants. You can choose to use a No. 4 medium weight yarn on the lighter side, such as the Lion brand Pound of Love, like we did in the shorts tutorial, and the hook sizes used in that pattern also. You can also use a No. 3 lightweight yarn along with the hook sizes used in the shorts tutorial, as I said in the shorts tutorial. And if you have not seen that and you would like to know what I am talking about, again, that link will be in the description box below and you can check that out. When you have the amount of stitches needed to be comfortable around your waist or wherever you would like your pants to sit, you will then make sure that this beginning chain is straight all the way back to the very first chain that you made. You will insert your hook into that stitch and slip stitch this together to make it a loop. We are then going to start off with a chain of 2, which does not count as a stitch, and we are going to double crochet into the same stitch and into every single stitch around this chain. And you will want to make sure that you have the same amount of double crochets as you did for your chain, again not including that beginning chain 2. When you have made it all the way around that row and you have the same amount of double crochets as chains, you will then slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet of the round. And that is it for the first row. So you'll now go on to repeat this same thing by chaining 2, which does not count as a stitch, double crochet into the same stitch and every single stitch all the way around, and you will want to repeat that for at least one more row to create a band at the top of your pants. You will now go on to repeat this row at least one more time to create a band at the top of your pants, or as many times as you need to until you need to start increasing for your hips and legs. You will know that you need to start increasing for your hips and legs because your work will start stretching out if you try it on, and you will start to see spaces in between your stitches. And that is when you will need to start increasing for your hips and legs. So again, you will chain 2, which does not count as a stitch, and double crochet into the same stitch in every stitch all the way around, and repeat that until you have a band or until you need to start increasing for your hips and legs. I am going to go on to repeat this row for a total of 5 rows because that is how many I need until I need to start increasing for my hips and legs. Okay, I have now worked the same row 5 times for a total of 5 rows. You of course will work yours however many you would like before you are ready to start increasing for your hips. And we are now going to want to divide the number of stitches that you have in half. As I said, I am working with 108 stitches, and half of that is 54. So you will want to take however many stitches you have and divide that in half. When you have figured out what stitch is your middle stitch, we will then start with a chain 2, which still does not count as a stitch, and we are going to work 2 double crochets into this first stitch. So this first stitch is the first of the first half of our work, and then we are going to go on to work 1 double crochet in each stitch until you have 1 stitch left for the first half of your work. So as I said, I have 2 double crochets in the first stitch, which is 1. I have worked 1 double crochet in the next 2, so that's 1, 2, 3 stitches. And as I said, 54 stitches is half of my work right now. So I am going to go on to work 1 double crochet in the next 52 stitches, and that will put me in the 53rd stitch with 1 stitch left before the middle of my work. When you have 1 stitch left for the first half of your work so far, for me that is the 54th stitch, you will then work 2 double crochets into that stitch, the very middle stitch. So at this point you should have 2 double crochets in the very first stitch for this row, then 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way until the last stitch of the first half, where you will also have 2 double crochets in that stitch. For the second half of our work, we are then again going to start with 2 double crochets in this next stitch, which is the first stitch of the second half of our work. Then we again are going to go on to work 1 double crochet in each stitch until you have 1 stitch left for the second half of your work. When you have 1 stitch left for the second half of your work, which is also the last stitch of the row, you will then again work 2 double crochets into the last stitch and then slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet of the row. So we have basically now just added 2 stitches to both halves of our work. So for me now, instead of having 54 stitches on one side, I have 56 stitches on one side and 56 on the other. And we are going to go on to work the row the exact same. So we are going to start with a chain 2, which again does not count as a stitch, and we are going to work 2 double crochets in this first stitch. And then I'm going to go on to work 1 double crochet in the next 54 stitches, which will put me in the 55th stitch with 1 stitch left for the first half of my work. You will want to do the same thing by double crocheting 2 times in the first stitch and work 1 double crochet in each stitch until you have 1 stitch left for the first half of your work at this point. When you have 1 stitch left for the first half of your work at this point, you will again work 2 double crochets into that stitch. And that will be the first middle stitch of these 4 that make up the 2 double crochets in 1 stitch, one right after the other. So that was the first middle stitch, which is the last stitch of the first half of our work. And then we are going to go on to work 2 double crochets in the next stitch, which is the first stitch of the second half of our work. and also the second middle stitch of those 4 stitches, making up the 2 double crochets in the same stitch right after the other. You will then again go on to work 1 double crochet in each stitch on the second half of your work until you have 1 stitch left. When you have 1 stitch left for the second half of your work, which again is the last stitch, you will then again work 2 double crochets into that same stitch and then slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet to join. We should now have these points starting on our work, one point where we are starting our rows at here, and the other point on the other side where we have been making our increases halfway through the rounds. And when we have worked this first part of our pants to be the length that we need, these 2 points will be what are connecting underneath us to make the legs of our pants. So you will now want to go on to repeat this last row the same way that we have worked the last 2 rows, with the increase in the very middle stitches of both of these points. And you will want to go on to repeat this until you have about 2 to 3 inches until these points meet underneath you. So again, you will just want to go on to repeat this same row, making sure your increases are in the 2 very middle stitches of the increase from the last row. If you need to increase more than this at any point for your hips or legs, you can of course do so. You will just want to make sure to add the same amount of stitches on both halves of your work. When you have worked that increasing row as many times as you need to have 2 to 3 inches in between both tips before they meet underneath you, then we will go on to attach the 2 tips and make the legs of our pants. I went on to work the increasing row for 8 rows, so I now have a total of 13 rows altogether, with the beginning 5 rows of 1 double crochet all the way around, and then 8 rows of increasing. To connect the 2 sides, we are going to start right where we left off. So we're going to start with a chain 1, which does not count as a stitch, and we are going to single crochet 1 time into the same stitch, which does count as our first stitch. We are then going to chain 1, 2, and 3 for a total of 4 stitches, and you can chain more or less if you would like. So we are now going to slip stitch into the corresponding stitch on the other side of our work. So here is where our rows have been starting and where we have been increasing on this side, and we are going to go to the very middle stitch on the left side, so the left middle stitch on the opposite side of our work where we have also been increasing. So it is the exact same stitch on both tips, and we are going to slip stitch into that stitch. You will then turn your work so that we are looking at the other side that we just slip stitched into, just like this. And we are going to slip stitch into the next stitch, which is the next middle stitch of the increase on the other side of our shorts. So again, slip stitch into that, and then we are going to slightly turn our work so that we are looking at the chain that we just made, like so. And then we are going to single crochet into this first chain here. So single crochet into the first chain for 1, and then you will do the same thing for the next 3 stitches by single crocheting into each stitch all the way across. When you have single crocheted in each stitch all the way across, you will then slip stitch into the next middle stitch on the increase of the side that we started on. When you have slip stitched into that next middle stitch, we will then turn our work back so that we are working across the stitches that we just made, and we are now going to make the first row for our legs. So to do that, we are going to start with a chain 2, which does not count as a stitch, just like it hasn't been counting as a stitch, and we are going to double crochet into this next stitch and into every single stitch all the way around. So we are going to go on to work 1 double crochet across this chain that we just made to connect the middle, like so, and then we will go on to work 1 double crochet around each stitch around the main part of our shorts. Then you will come back to the first double crochet and slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet of the leg hole. If you need to bring any 2 stitches together around the leg, then you can go ahead and do so to close any holes or more fit the shape of your leg. I am only going to be working 1 row of solid double crochets around the top of my leg for the pants. So if you want to work more than 1 row, then you can go ahead and do so by working 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way around for however many rows you would like before starting the pattern for your leg. The reason that I say that is because when you are ready to start working the pattern for the leg of these pants, you will want the number of stitches that you have to be a multiple of 4. So whether you are just working this 1 row or more than just this 1 row of solid double crochets, you will want to make sure that the number of stitches that you have at the end of those rows is a multiple of 4. If you need to add or subtract any stitches at any point, you can go ahead and do that wherever you feel comfortable doing so. Just make sure that the number of stitches that you have by the time you are ready to start working the pattern is a multiple of 4. When you have worked the first row, or however many rows you would like around the leg of your pants before you start the pattern, and made sure that your stitches are a multiple of 4, then we will go on to start the pattern for the leg. To begin the pattern for the leg of our pants, we are going to start with the chain of 4, which counts as a double crochet and a chain 1. We are then going to skip the next stitch and double crochet into the next after that, which is the 3rd stitch. We are then going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and double crochet into the next, and repeat that all the way around this row, again by chaining 1, skipping a stitch, and double crocheting into the next, and repeat that all the way around until you get back to the beginning chain 4. When you get all the way around that row, you should have double crocheted in the second to last stitch, so you have 1 stitch left to skip. We will then chain 1 and slip stitch into the 3rd stitch of the beginning 4 from the beginning of this row. For the next row, we are going to start off with a chain of 2, which does not count as a stitch, and we are going to double crochet into the same stitch for the first stitch of the row, and then we are going to double crochet 1 time around the first chain 1 space, then double crochet into the next double crochet stitch, and repeat this all the way around, again by double crocheting around the next chain 1 space, and double crocheting into the next double crochet, and again repeating this all the way around. When you get all the way around that row and have double crocheted around the last chain 1 space, you will then slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet of the round. For the next row, we are going to start with a chain of 6, which counts as a double crochet and a chain of 3. So then we will go on to double crochet into the 3rd stitch that we just worked to keep that in place. Again, work a double crochet into the 3rd chain that we just worked. We will then go on to work a double crochet into the 2nd chain and also the 1st chain. So we will have a double crochet in the first 3 stitches that we just worked, and the chain 3 will be parallel to the 3 double crochets that we just worked, like so. We are then going to go on to skip the next 3 stitches, so you will want to make sure that you are actually working into the 5th stitch, because this is counting for this first stitch, and then we will skip the next 1, 2, 3, and work into the 5th stitch. So we are going to double crochet right into that stitch, the 5th stitch of the round so far, and then we are going to go on to work a chain of 3, and then we are going to work 3 double crochets around the post of the double crochet that we just worked. So double crochet right around the post of that double crochet 1, 2, and 3 times around the post of that double crochet, and it will look exactly the same as what we did the first time. We will now go on to repeat this same thing all the way around this row. So again, we are going to skip the next 3 stitches and double crochet into the next, which is the double crochet. We will work our 3 double crochets around, then we will chain 3 and double crochet 3 times around the post of the double crochet that we just made. And again, you will go on to repeat this all the way around until you get back to the first set that we made. When you get all the way around that row, you will have one set in your 4th to last stitch, which leaves you 3 stitches left to skip, and you will then slip stitch around this loop here at the top of the first set that we made. So this is the beginning chain 6 that we made with double crochets in the first 3, and the last 3 make up this loop on the top. So we are just going to slip stitch right around that loop. For the next row, we are basically going to do the exact same thing, again by starting off with a chain of 6, which counts as a double crochet and a chain 3. We are then going to double crochet into the 3rd chain of the 6, and again double crochet into that stitch so it stays where it is at, and then we will go on to work a double crochet in the 2nd chain of the 6 and a double crochet in the 1st chain of the 6, just like that. And then we are going to go on to double crochet around the next chain 3 loop. So we have the 3 double crochet around the post of the double crochet, and then this chain 3 loop again. So we are going to double crochet around that chain 3 loop, which is the post that we will work 3 double crochets around. So we are going to chain 3 and work 3 double crochets around the post of the double crochet that we just worked. Just like that. 3 double crochets around the post of that double crochet, and then we will go on to do the same thing all the way around this row, again by double crocheting around the next chain 3 loop, chaining 3, and working 3 double crochets around the post of the double crochet that we just worked. And again, do this all the way around this row. When you have worked that all the way around, and you have a set around the last chain 3 loop of the round, we will then again slip stitch around the chain 3 loop at the beginning of the round. For the next row, which is the 5th row of our pattern so far, we are going to start off with a chain of 1, which does not count as a stitch, and we are going to single crochet around the same chain 3 loop that we slip stitched into. Then we are going to chain 3 and single crochet around the next chain 3 loop, and that is the pattern for this row. So again, we are going to chain 3 and single crochet around the next chain 3 loop, and repeat this all the way around. When you have worked that all the way around and you have single crocheted around the last chain 3 loop of the round, we will then chain 3 one last time and then slip stitch into the top of the first single crochet of the round. For the 6th and final row of the pattern for our leg of our pants, we are going to start off with a chain of 2, which does not count as a stitch, and we are going to double crochet into the same single crochet that we slip stitched into. Then we are going to go on to work 3 double crochets around the next chain 3 space. So work 3 double crochets around this chain 3 space, then work 1 double crochet into the next single crochet. And we are going to repeat this all the way around, again by working 3 double crochets around the next chain 3 space, and then 1 double crochet into the next single crochet, and repeat this all the way around. When you have worked that all the way around and you have 3 double crochets around the last chain 3 space of the round, we will then slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet of the round. We are then going to go on to repeat the last 6 rows for the length of the leg of our pants. So again, you will just start with this row of 1 double crochet every other stitch and go through these 6 rows until you have the length for your leg of your pants that you would like. When you have worked your pant leg to be the length that you would like, you will go ahead and finish that off. I went ahead and worked the pattern of rows 1 through 6 for the leg 6 times all the way through, and that is what I have here. I wanted a couple of extra rows but didn't have enough room to work the pattern all the way through again, so I just worked 2 extra rows of solid double crochets. You can of course do the same thing if you need to add a little bit of extra length but don't have enough room to go through the rows 1 through 6 for the pattern of the legs again. So again, if you would like, you can just add a couple of extra solid double crochet rows at the bottom of your pants. When you have that worked the way that you would like, again, you will finish that off and cut your string. When you have finished off the first leg and you are ready to start the second leg, we will simply start with a loop on our hook and slip stitch that into a stitch on the back of the main part of our pants where our second leg hole is. And again, you will just slip stitch that right onto there. Then we are going to start with a chain of 2, just like we have been, which does not count as a stitch, and we will double crochet into the same stitch and every single stitch all the way around this row. You will want to work this second pant leg to be the exact same as the first pant leg, so if you only worked 1 solid row at the beginning before starting the pattern, you will want to do the same thing for this second pant leg, and if you worked more than 1, go ahead and do the exact same thing, making sure to have the same amount of stitches on this second leg as you did on the first leg when you are ready to start the pattern. So again, go ahead and work 1 double crochet all the way around this row, or work it exactly the same as you worked your rows on this other leg, and then go ahead and work rows 1 through 6 for the pattern for this second leg until you have the same length that you had for the first. When you come to this chain space in the middle for the first round of this second leg, you will just work 4 double crochets into the other side of the chain across the middle and slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet of the round, just like we have been, and again work the second leg exactly the same as you worked the first. When you have finished the second leg, you will do the same thing, of course, by finishing it off, and you will weave in all of your ends. Also, I went ahead and made a little braided string with 3 strings of yarn and weaved it through every other 2 stitches, like so, to make a little belt for the top of my pants, just in case they decided to stretch out halfway through the day or anything like that. And that's all there is to it, so I hope that that was helpful and enjoyable for you. If it was, please hit that sub, like, and bell button and leave me a comment to tell me what you think. I hope that you guys go on to create many more amazing things, and until next time guys, I'll see ya.